everybody. Thank you for coming. I'm delighted to have you all here and delighted to bring my good friend Rob Roy to present with everyone. I want to give a quick informal introduction before I give his more kind of formal introduction. Rob and I have known each other, I think, since 1999, the summer of which we met in a sort of strange situation where we were both living on this island, and I was living in a shack, literally, and Rob was living in a tent on the beach. And we sort of met because there were a bunch of us who were like working there and doing this sort of thing, and we didn't really have any place to stay. We didn't have living rooms or homes, really. We were all just kind of like working there in the summer. And so a bunch of us started to hang out in this cafe. And it happened to be a bunch of folks like Rob and others who are really interested in not just music, but sort of the outer reaches of sound and the possibilities of sound and music. And that was just a really great thing. It just so happened that we ended up living in two other cities over many years together. So Western Massachusetts and Northampton and San Francisco. So over these many years, like I've come to know Rob very well. And he's somebody who's been sort of always ahead of me, sort of an inspiration, I would say, in understanding experimental music, avant-garde music, like, again, the outer reaches of what's possible with sound. And so, you know, he's shown up in various ways through our experimentations in my own work. And he's somebody who was kind of ahead of the curve with folks like John Cage and Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, who some of you may know. So he's been sort of a teacher to me, and a good sort of friend and inspiration for many, many years. And so here's Rob's sort of formal introduction. Rob Roy has performed and recorded electroacoustic music as Horaflora since 2005, and more recently as Cywene. Performance is often based around low-tech immersive sound, utilizing novel arrays of semi-autonomous devices and techniques. Roy has graced the stage with no shortage of luminaries of global experimental scene, such as Raphael Torrell, Keith Fullerton, one of our mutual favorites, Jan Janolik, Nautical Almanac, Wolf Eyes, Lawrence English, and Lexington's own Robert Beatty. He has performed at the San Francisco Electronic Music Festival. He later served on the board. The Soundwave Festival for the Arts and Sound, Gray Area, SF, Indexical Santa Cruz. There are some folks from Santa Cruz in the audience. Brutal SFX, Savage Weekend, Weirdstock, and the International Noise Festival. He has released music on labels such as Finery, sorry. Thank you. Zero Point Research, Tone Burst, and Mops, and No Bass is Deep Enough. In addition to all of that, he, with his partner Diane Lin, founded Weird Ear Records, a record label reveling in disparate forms of experimental music. Their slogan, "The Weird Ear, the Better," serves as a guideline to the curatorial themes across all of these projects. They hosted over 100 acts at their church-turned underground venue, Life Changing Ministries, between 2012 and 2015. Help me welcome Rob Roy.
Thanks everybody for coming. Okay, getting into it. I don't know if I'm going to need this or not. There's going to be some sound, so we'll see. I'm going to riff a little bit more than I think I expected to. I'm not from an academic background, and this is actually maybe the first time I've been inside of a school in quite a little while. And so thanks for having me. It's been a little bit of a nostalgia trip, and yeah, I guess I'll get into it. As Forrest said, my name is Rob Roy. I've been recording, performing experimental, avant-garde, or difficult music since 2003. As Horaflora since 2007. That's primarily what I'm here to talk about today, is that particular practice. I'm going to be talking about just my process, largely about my process, the tools, a little bit of the concepts and philosophy. Some of it will be a little technical, some of it will be a little philosophical, and some of it will make sense. Thanks. I'm gonna just start with a quick piece, did back in 2010. Hallway full of wind-powered, well, let's try the microphone. Let's see if this works out in practice as it did in rehearsal. So a hallway full of wind-powered instruments, strung throughout the battery showing this not because I think it needs an explanation, but because I don't think it does. It hints at something that Jason put all the time. Sound that emerges rather than performs, if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, maybe by the end it will. We're going to come around to how we got here, but a little bit about how we began first. Yeah, check. Volume-wise, this is good. Are we good? Everybody hear me? All right, great. Big enough. All right, there we go. Just gonna let this play for a second. The music playing right now is John Cage's sonatas and interludes for prepared piano from 1950. That's him in the middle. We have a laser pointer. There it is. Placing screws and other objects between the strings. That technique is called preparing the piano, and it doesn't just apply to pianos. It applies to any given traditional instrument or even object that you might use to make sound. Some of which I'll be demonstrating up here. All of this would be considered prepared instruments, I think, for the most part, by and large. But I've got all these historical figures up here that absolutely relate to what I do, but I'm actually going to skip almost all historical context today. There's certainly composers, movements, lineages that relate, but you can find out about that later. And at the end, there's a QR code. I set up like a keynote companion on my website in order to help with that if anybody's more interested with these guys and people and others. Yeah, so moving along. Also about context. I came to appreciate experimental music, not through context, but through exposure. These are just a few albums that I heard when I was younger that I didn't understand at all on first listen, second listen, multiple listens. And it was through curiosity and perseverance of just, what is this? How is this something to listen to? Why should I appreciate this, I guess? That kept me coming back and eventually coming to not only appreciate them, but to love them. And, now I seek to maybe emulate or whatever, do a thing. There's a little bit from Angst's first album. And the thing that I think it is that they resist easy listening, right? And maybe that's why people call it difficult music, because it asks something of you. And of course, if the sound can ask something of you, then you can be in a conversation with it. So that's what I endeavor to do here. So hopefully, what's playing right now is difficult enough that at least some of you are like, yeah, this is music. Perfect. That's awesome. Moving on. All right, little bit about me. I grew up around classical music, the symphony. My family's part of the symphony world. The depth and movement of the orchestra and its sections stuck with me. And even back then, I think I was starting to hear sound as a kind of architecture, as opposed to, movements, structure, form. And over the years, I think I keep coming back to that as it taught me something about sound, that it doesn't need rhythm and melody to matter, to be appreciated, to be enjoyed, to be considered, whatever you want to call it. Texture, pacing, the presence in space. That's kind of the go-to for this slide. Moving along. And one other thing that will sort of guided me and will guide the talk a little. This isn't actually me, but I'm pretending it is. I wasn't going to tell you guys that, but I feel like being honest all of a sudden. A particular moment when I was young, wearing headphones, little pocket radio, just flipping through the dials, I flipped onto a solo piano piece, and the sound was kind of amazing. It was unlike anything I had heard. It felt close and present to a degree that I actually took off my headphones to see if somebody was playing a trick on me, and there was, maybe my mother was playing an invisible piano in the room. I don't know what I would have been thinking there, but that's true. I said I was going to be honest. All of that is true. Pulled it off. What I came to realize is what this probably was what's called a binaural recording. We're going to get a little into that. Something you may already know about, and we can dig in or we can skip a little bit of the technical. That's that, binaural. We're going to move on a little. We're going to fast forward, actually. 2001, that was from a long time ago. Fast forward to 2001, I had deliberately decided to get into music. I bought my first sampler, an MPC 2000. I didn't really know about music or audio gear. I just knew I wanted to do something with it along the lines that I've been talking about already. I figured I would start with sampling CDs and records. That's what you do. I'm sure everybody's aware that you sample records. But the sampler itself came with a microphone, and I was such a noob that I didn't know about like an auxiliary cord or how to connect a CD player to the sampler. So pretty soon I had the microphone attached to the sampler and was crouching on the floor recording the carpet. And that ended up being the best thing that could have happened, in my opinion. Instead of pulling sounds from records or CDs, I started pointing the mic at things around me. Whatever made a sound, mixing bowl, espresso machine, steam wand, or squeaky faucet, for example. And that accidental limitation set me on a path that I didn't expect, that I hadn't planned for. Started to focus on the sounds that were already around me, paying closer attention, building rhythms and melodies out of everyday noise. An early, what would you call that? An early work. A sketch work. I moved beyond just turning found sound into little bit stuff. Started developing through improvisation more dynamic ways of playing the sampler, techniques that pushed it beyond what it was initially designed to do. Around that time, a little bit later, I was talking with a collaborator about an idea I had been circling. What if you could break sound into tiny pieces and then reassemble those pieces, but still address each of those pieces in order to make any phrase or sample more malleable in a variety of ways. He said, oh, that's actually already a thing. That's called granular synthesis. And he explained the concept to me, and I'm going to explain it to you. So granular synthesis, or sometimes called grain-wave synthesis or sampling, is a technique where sound is broken into tiny fragments, just like I had speculated it could be. Each grain can be independently manipulated, pitch, the timing of it, filtering, where it sits in the stereo field, all of that stuff. By shifting and layering these grains as they play back, after individually addressing them, as I said, you can completely transform the character of a sound and stretch it, smear it, explode it into something rhythmic or completely abstract. A little sample of that.
As I leave the spit gray factory. As I leave. Spit gray factory.
I'd like to think it's pretty clear how that works at this point. And if it's not, again, I'll just go back to saying it's enthusiasm and curiosity, not context, so you can learn about that later. Or we can talk a little bit more about it. So at the time that I was working with the sampler, the kind of manipulation that you just heard usually meant rendering a file online, setting parameters, maybe guessing what some of the best parameters would be, hitting render, and then letting it process, and you get a file back, and you see what you got. The way that I developed on my sampler was interesting because you could do it live, you could do it by hand. You can re-trigger, detune, reshape fragments in real time and performance, which made it more like an instrument and less like a playing back of files. Which, when it comes to live performance, live electronic performance, which is one of the primary things that I'm here to talk about, what you're presenting on stage, you know, if it's a guy with a laptop or a person with a laptop, I suppose, versus something that is more like an instrument, it can make a world of difference in how it goes over, how it's perceived. I will note, by the point that this slide was taken, I moved beyond using that single mic. I had learned about aux cables, and I had started paying attention again to the way sound behaved in space. So not just from mono samples, but different placements and techniques, how they could shape a recording or performance. The solo piano, binaural probably recording that I had heard as a kid had stayed with me, and I started to get into that. A little bit about what that is. If anybody here knows it, you might most likely know it from ASMR, which usually uses this technique. It uses two microphones placed either in your ears, like literally, or sometimes in a dummy head or a pineapple to capture sound the way that we actually hear it. That uses a couple things I find pretty interesting called acoustic shadows, which is, you know, if I snap over here, my skull is going to block some of these frequencies, so they hit this ear, and the difference between the frequencies, my ears are going to be able to tell, hey, this snap came from over here. There's a couple other things that go into it, but just by putting microphones in your ears, you can absolutely capture that phenomenon. And then specifically, when listening back over headphones, that's when it really reveals itself. I've got a couple of examples here that I asked Forrest if we could have everyone bring some headphones. Did he? No, just kidding, he said no. So hopefully over the PA system, you'll notice some spatial vividity, and if you don't, you can just take my word for it. Okay. So coming up, we have a little sample I took. It's a rain gutter from Alameda outside of San Francisco. In the distance, about 7 seconds of that, and then just a quick manipulation. It's a binaural sample, manipulated granularly, and I'll just reiterate why I'm talking about this in a second. Let's hear it. So why this matters in the context of this talk is it had essentially made it so that when I was playing back these samples, even in a live situation, I just told you you need headphones to hear it, but playing back the samples, performing live with binaural samples, even that, using multiple iterations of different samples stacked on top of each other, definitely brought a certain vividity to the stereo space, more so than just panning back and forth, or like the Beatles, you know, having like just John backwards talking satanically in one ear and like Ringo in the other, or whatever. So I took a lot of value out of this, and And we performed this way for a good many years. Eventually laptops, and of course later phones and tablets became powerful enough for anyone to perform in this way, to record a sample and play it back granularly, and you could definitely record stuff binaurally as well. But after a little while, this thing that I developed on my own, this tactile and live performance method, was everywhere. Many shows that I would go to and play at, people would be playing a laptop, playing some of these same techniques. So even like the spatial nuance of the little binaural details that once had felt like intimate and strange ended up being some generic presets that you could just get on the App Store at this point. As a side note, this demo, this is in the corner. Up here, this is Max Matthews, who's considered the godfather of computer music, just enjoying the hell out of his, that's all new to him. He's been around for so long. He's so happy he doesn't have to do a punch card just to render some stuff. And over here, we've got Borderlands, which is an iPad tool for granular synthesis, and part of the issue that what I take issue with is part of like, this is just a demo. You can do more with it, but like, personally, I find this, like I'd listen to this at the spa, maybe, for example. So it rendered the technique that we had found artistic merit in mundane. So that's the long and short of it. So our performance in that fashion sort of petered out, as I became less enamored of these techniques that we had developed, and I went back to paying attention to small and physical sounds, the rubbing, squeaking, rasping, droning, thumping. These are not me necessarily. I actually just didn't have access to like an old hard drive, so I pulled these from the net, but some of this will give you the idea of what I'm talking about. This kind of very tactile, it seems like it's right there in front of you. Oh yeah, sorry, watch out, tinnitus folks. We got some bowed cactus that really slaps here. So I got back into like doing this kind of close mic, just long improvisation recording thing that I found was maybe difficult to bring to a performance setting, not wanting to perform with a laptop, and maybe shying away from just samples at this point. I also felt like the PA speaker might not carry the weight and the tactility of these the way that I really wanted them to. So great for recordings. I have a lot of recordings that have used this sort of thing, but I'm invested in performance. Oh, sorry, I'll bring it way down. All right, you guys get the picture of it. I got an ear block over here. So the highs are rolled off, the lows are rolled off, everything's rolled off now. Where was I? Oh yeah, so if the PA can't carry a physical presence into the room, then what can, right? If that's what I'm interested in. This is around, I don't know, 2008 or something like that. I decided to start presenting the objects themselves, to bring them in, to start doing an electroacoustic, if you will. That's generally what it's called. It's what we call improvisatory performance. My very first one, my first attempt at this, failed miserably. Small gallery in Northampton, where I knew Forrest, brought a series of maybe 4 or 5 electric and acoustic or electroacoustic objects, things to play, to explore what kind of sounds they can make. This is a broken hard drive being picked up with an electromagnetic pickup coil. I had something like this. I had a malfunctioning hard drive, made amazing sounds just by miking it in different places. The problem with like playing with like glitchy or malfunctioning equipment as a means to an end is that what can happen, and what happened is that when I got to the show, my malfunctioning hard drive malfunctioned all the way to kaput, if you're familiar with the term kaput. It's technical. So it stopped working. I had a number of other acoustic like phenomenon and little automatons, some of which were very frail and difficult to portray, difficult to mic. Didn't really want to mic them in the first place. That would have, ruined the whole intent. But basically everything failed on that evening, and the performance was, this is the joke, a flop. Okay. I just remembered, I sort of just remembered, I think over here, I've got, so one of those things, I haven't pulled this out in a long time. One of those things that hopefully, to illustrate my point, won't work, is a jaw harp being played with an electric fan. So this is a tricky one to get, right? And it was that night. Worked great in my apartment, but I was too nervous and my hands were too shaky to get it right. Let's get it wrong again. Let's see how we get it. Hold on. You get the idea? Mm-hmm. You see how that could fail? Mm-hmm. See how it could also maybe go well? Save your applause for me. Appreciate it. There's going to be a bunch of this. I do appreciate it. So that's a little bit of that. I did use this every now and then as we're going forward, as we talk about the performance that developed out of this. This would be used in pretty intimate settings or very resonant rooms. That the bunker, the Battery Townsley that Forrest helped me with the installation, wasn't just an installation, was also a performance. Used it there. Okay, that's a chef's kiss. It's another technical term. Oh yeah, moving on. So that performance failed, and that failure stayed with me for quite a little while. I moved. It doesn't really have much to do with anything, but I moved to San Francisco. Was working insularly and looking for shows, still not sure what I was going to present, but wanting to get back to performance. The first show that I got, I'd gone someplace and I talked to the promoter. He said, "Oh yeah, you can open. You can open, but you have to play on time. You can't play for more than 20 minutes, and you better be good. You're done this time. Watch out for cutthroat." I was like, well, I'll just play these recordings, these tactile recordings that I've accumulated from my laptop. We'll just do like a very safe, like field recording set. If that doesn't mean anything to anybody, it's okay. But as it would happen, another failure set the path. My laptop, in this case, a couple of days before the performance completely crashed, and at that point I decided, well, I've still been working with some of these things. And I have a couple of ideas of how to make them work. Let's go risky again. And ultimately, what I presented that night and discovered was that there's a few things that you can do to make something like that work. A multiplicity of things, iterating on them. So if I have one electric jaw harp going, and it's not always going to work, right? Well, if it's just me, it's hard to have multiples of those, so that kind of went to the wayside. But some of the things I'm about to show you, I would set up multiples of. I have a few drums here, I'm going to talk about those in a second, some balloons, maybe some of you can see. I bet almost everybody here thought this was part of the drawing room when you came in, maybe, maybe not. It certainly felt kindred to this room. Let me get back on track, I kind of meandered. So, corporal, multiple iterations, oh yeah. So this somewhat, by having multiple iterations of things, solved the problem of fragile or tedious techniques. And then a sort of a through line of this that you might pick up, and now I'm making it super blatant, is what I hadn't anticipated and now embrace, not just in the practice, but in life, is how failure can actually push you towards something maybe more interesting than what you had preconceived in the first place. And the reason I mention that is because these techniques don't always work. I can set them up and they can fail, and hopefully something that night will work. Otherwise, but that becomes part of the performance. Going around and resetting, reanimating, really, swapping out different things becomes part of the performance, and that kind of tension of the audience realizing, oh, this is fragile. There's anticipation, there's tension, and there might even be a sort of catharsis as things gel, hopefully. So the risk becomes part of the form. Frame drums. This is a frame drum. Where's my laser pointer? There it is. There it is. There it is. There it is. Frame drums have become a core surface, literally, of my performances. Not necessarily as instruments, but as resonant membranes for other sound-making actions, for activating their surface. My mother had gotten me a frame drum for Christmas, I think, when I first got to San Francisco. I think it's called a bow drum, which is maybe Irish. We're a little Irish, and I hope you guys can understand me through my accent. So I didn't play them in the traditional sense. I would use them. I discovered very quickly that you can use them. You can prepare them. I think some of you got here late, but for those of you that didn't, if you remember John Cage from slide number 2, this is a prepared instrument. This is my little prepared instrument. So toothbrushes, slinkies, balloons, bits of metal, styrofoam, transducers, we're going to talk about just a little bit. Anything that vibrates and has the potential to interact with the drum. Moving along. And this one, I made sound samples for everything just in case my gear got lost, but it didn't. So I think I will turn down the sound and move on to the next one. Can I do that? I can. So I'll just start over here, and I'll say one of the simplest tools, and one of the first ones that I kind of discovered as something amazing, interesting sound is these Oral-B Pulsar Plus electric toothbrushes. Okay, and I borrowed a couple of drums. Neither of them are quite big enough to actually do this. Imagine this a little louder. Imagine it with like 3 or 4 drums going, if you will. Could sound a little like this. Sounds a lot like that, but here's it louder just for you in the back. So what I get out of these is a pulsing, phasing, changing drone dynamic that can fill out the sound initially. It can sound, I don't want to impose my idea of what it sounds like. It's one of the things that's important to me is not putting my idea of what I'm doing into other people's heads. We'll talk about that a little bit, otherwise what are we doing here? They tend to drift, they change positions, mid-performance, they fall off entirely, or sometimes they'll just stop working, run out of battery or whatever. I do feel a little bit bad using these because I've gone through a lot in my lifetime. Oral, health be damned. Anyways, little undulations and stuff. So that was that. We will move on. We're just getting into the techniques. Where are we at with time? Beautiful. Oh, we're right up against that. You told me that would happen. I was like, no, I talk fast. Okay. The next one, which has become a little bit of a hallmark of my performance, that I don't know, maybe I'm known for, is these balloons. This is a punching balloon, such that you would get at a kid's birthday party. If you know any kids or have birthdays. There's a trombone mouthpiece inside the mouth of this. And what I discovered, which is kind of cool, I'll they'll work is that when you blow them up and put them on the drum, they will expel and activate the head of the drum. Let's check it out. Take my word for it. Over the course of a performance, when I have a bunch of these things going all at once, I'm not demonstrating something. This is the first time I've done a demonstration like this, I think. I have time to come back to these. If they don't work like that in the first place, you know, I'll tend to something else, and I come back, and I'd like for this to work, so I'm going to try it one more time. I know we're up against the clock here. Try this guy over here. While we're waiting to see if that takes off, I don't know if it's no wind, you guys might be the humidity out here. Yeah, that's not going to work today. I apologize for that. I might try it again after, but we'll get through the end of this. A slinky is another one. I like to use to punctuate things, walking around. Walking around and placing these cassette Walkman, not actually what these are just little speakers, but I'll use this for just a little punctuation here and there. Again, frame drum design, remote, which is technical stuff there. When I'm walking around, I need to switch the slide. Let me keep up with the slide. There's your pointer. There it is. All right. I was going to talk about transducers next. You know what I'm going to do since we're close to the end? I might do these demos after, so if anybody wants to go, we'll do that. We'll get through this quickly. Transducers, another thing I like to use. What this is a small speaker driver that, when placed on any resonant island, you can see them here on a large piece of metal, and in the background a tin. Whatever sound you're putting through them, whatever you're playing through them, tends to become colored and characterized more by the object that it's transducing through, that it's being used to like fulfill its job. And one of the things I find interesting is, so I call it an electroacoustic performance. The balloons, when they work, which they would given enough time, tend to have a very clear, keening foghorn or trumpet-like sound. It undulates a little bit, but it almost sounds like an electronic synthesizer, just like an oscillator. And they're purely acoustic. The electric nature of these actually come across as more chaotic, more lively, and the sort of juxtaposition between the acoustic and the electric in this instance is part of what I like about it. The push and pull, the contrast, and again, they're very unstable. I think in the video you might have seen something fall off, and again, so I'm going around, moving things around. I will also mention there's a performance on Sunday, as I mentioned at the end, so this should all actually happen for real on Sunday. Moving along, prepared speakers. Just a speaker cone, a more normal speaker cone with any kind of object put on top of it, which I think of as a complement to the transducers. With the transducers, you're pushing sound through objects. With this, I'm pushing objects onto sounds, right? So just by playing a very low frequency bass hum, this really, I will put castanets, shakers, marbles, any kind of thing that will shake, rattle, hum, etc. This adds a good amount of, I think, I'm not sure how to pronounce the word, gravitas. Yeah. I brought some very small transducers today. They're not very powerful, but I can demonstrate them in a couple of minutes. Moving along, lastly, I've got a cardboard tube or some kind of tube attached to a horn that I will also use to punctuate things. When in those times that things are going well, and I don't need to use my mouth to inflate balloons or I don't have to go put things back, I'm able to play this. Another aspect of all of this that I have kind of, I've really delved into over the years is, I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of this is trash. I'm playing on trash, and I mean drums aren't trash, but it's a very found sound aesthetic still that is carried over from the early microphone and sampler days, and of course I'm sure at this point you've seen how the tactility and vividity of having an actual acoustic or electroacoustic item in front of you really helps the performance. Got just a couple more slides. Oh wait, I have a ton more slides. If anybody does have to go, it's all over. It's fine. Oh, we've got time? Oh, wonderful.
Ideally,
Oh, shucks. All right, let's go. Moving along. To complement all of that stuff and to present my field recordings, those things that still I was unable to find a way to present in a live fashion. What I also, the last part of this performance called Horaflora is a number of cassette Walkman. That's what it had traditionally been. At this point, I use these little SD card players. They're a little more precise, they're smaller and slightly less prone to malfunction. But then again, the malfunction can be part of the charm. So on these, what we would do is in my home studio, I would create usually a 6-channel immersive surround sound mix of field recordings or ad hoc recordings of found sound, like I said, things that maybe didn't translate to the stage. And during the performance, these get placed around the audience. I'll do that. And with the tape players, tape players are finicky. Some of you guys might not even really know what I'm talking about, but I hope you do. Let's just leave it at that. I can't explain a tape player, But the battery level of them, the wear of the tape, if you start them perfectly on time, which is really difficult, they're gonna drift no matter what. So when you compose for that, an interesting thing that can happen is you have to leave space for that drift. So whatever you put on them, it's not gonna be perfect. Rhythmic material almost will never work. And so some kind of phasing or dovetailing tones that go from speaker to speaker or joined amongst all of them is usually what it does. And sometimes you can just let them go and they don't have to be synced up, and what you get is maybe more interesting, than what you had planned on. Over the course of the years that I've been doing this, I've been placing them around the audience. In fact, I started thinking that the best thing to do would be to have all these things all around the audience. I thought that maybe the best way to give everybody a really unique and interesting concert experience was make it so that wherever you are in the room, these items, wherever they are, it's going to give you a slightly different mix of what's going on. And eventually, after some years of doing it, I started to bring it in towards the stage. This slide is meant to sort of, when you're setting up surround sound, like proper surround sound, there's really only one sweet spot. So something that always kind of bothered me, if I put a tape player right by somebody's head, that might be all that they're hearing, and if you're not in the sweet spot, then if everything goes perfectly, you're still not going to get like the ideal, like this is what I had intended. So I started pulling things back towards the front of the audience. So what is this, the laser? Oh, there we go. And I think I have to actually read off the thing now. So rather than circling, I would arrange them in staggering lines of height and depth. And with that shift, it kind of made something click. I wasn't sure what was happening, but by introducing depth as opposed to surround or immersion, like rather than presenting a theater or entertaining kind of experience, like surround sound and immersion is very associated with like VR and gaming at this point, and I kind of didn't want that to be associated with me. I wanted it to be more of an orchestral thing, and this in fact is exactly that. By having everything up front, you get depth and density as opposed to surround, and the same sounds that I used for the surround, it's arguable, it's subjective, but from 20 years of doing this, I think that a good speaker arrangement in front of the audience, so that you're hearing things from behind and a group of things will actually add to the what is the word I'm looking for here? I guess the experience. Sure, that's a word. I might come back to that word. That wasn't exactly what I was looking for. I really appreciate it. This was, I said I wasn't going to do historical references. This is Francois Bale from the 60s, his Acousmonium, which is a loudspeaker orchestra. Very similar idea, the same idea perhaps. I don't know if I stole from him. I know he didn't steal from me because he definitely got there first by a number of decades. But the idea of having different speakers with different frequency ranges and characteristics to replay a number of sounds in order to bring acousmatic, that's a word I hadn't brought up until now, so let's just ignore that. To bring I gotta use that word, acousmatic works to life, right? As tape, and then later digital arrangement and manipulation and recording came to the forefront, and physical, like actual instruments, were sometimes abandoned. The modern composers thought, well, what's an interesting way to present these tape works? And this is what he came up with. It's very in line with what I also came up with. Where are we at? So I will have a very quick moment of saying that I also perform as Simonee. This is a newer thing. That was basically for the Horaflora stuff. I started working again with electronics due to a move. I moved apartments, and I couldn't practice blowing up balloons in the apartment any longer. It's one of those hard to rehearse things. So electronics with headphones is great. And the thing that some of the more modern instrument designers in the synthesis world do that is very dear to my heart is they will make this is a little bit of that. I should have hit that. They make intuitive instruments that don't come with instruction, no labels. The Sia Lombard, Stuber, Coco Quantus, and Tocante, and all of them are played by trying and failing, or just trying to see what's going to make a sound, moving on, moving back, and maybe not totally understanding them. Again, that aspect of intuition and getting a playing partner out of the things that are talking back to you is what I get out of these. I don't know what I was going to say for this one. Wrapping it up, I guess if there's a through line in all of this, it's that I often ended up somewhere I didn't expect in performance as well as career-wise. Learning to trust systems that exceed my control, unlikely tools, missteps, and unexpected shifts, none of it planned, all of it formative. At least everything I presented to you guys today was formative. There might have been some other things I'm keeping under my hat. And the only real constant has been curiosity and perseverance. I don't know always what I'm building when I start. I just try to stay responsive to the materials, to the moment, to the space. Always in negotiation between intention and accident, and structure and collapse. I guess I've never had that much luck controlling things all the way through. Just try to build a strong beginning and then let it misbehave. Earlier when I mentioned those albums that I couldn't understand at first, the ones that I kept returning to until something clicked. It wasn't about training my ears, it was learning to stay curious. In my opinion, curiosity is the bridge between confusion and appreciation. Thank you.
We have a few minutes for questions, if anybody would like to ask Rob anything. Continue the curiosity. Yes?
Where are you performing Sunday?
Gallery, what's it called? Gallery?
Institute
193. Yep, with Forrest, who will be, I'll let him.
Yeah, I'm going to introduce with one of my sort of generative sound sculpture pieces, more or less welcoming people into the space. After that, our local Robert Beatty is going to perform at Sunspot.
This beautiful flyer.
Yes, send a big flyer, and then Rob is headlining with both of his acts. So they'll start with Horaflora.
I think I don't know what the lineup will be yet. But
Okay,
maybe
well-
Horaflora first, Robert, and then Simon. I don't know.
Yeah, okay, we'll figure that out. But he'll be performing both of his acts that he's been speaking of. So if you're curious about any of this, please join us Sunday at 7 p.m. You can find this flyer on the SAP's Instagram.
This QR code will bring you straight to my keynote companion, which has a little blurb about all of the composers that you saw mentioned, and some other stuff, basically like credit where credit is due, YouTube and all of that stuff, if you want. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I have another question.
I don't think you need to apologize.
Okay. Have you interacted with the music department?
I borrowed drums from them.
Okay. I'm going to tell Kevin Hudson about you. I don't know if you know him.
I don't.
Okay, you need to.
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah, this may be an excuse. Matt Brock is here, who's been spearheading in SABS. There is a somewhat quiet initiative to create a new sound-based degree that will kind of also parallel with filmmaking. So, and even beyond, which is really exciting, that'll sort of come to fruition in the semi-near future. But there, part of the reason that I brought Rob in is because a lot of us in the School of Visual Arts also have a keen interest in all forms of sound. Chad obviously included on the front row here, but a lot of us, don't even distinguish between visual art and audio, all sensory forms. So, and many, maybe most of us are including sound to some capacity in our work. Maybe film is the most obvious example, but sculpture, installation, etc. And so a lot of these ideas come from the world that Rob has been operating in. So I think it's great to be inspired in those ways. Any other questions?
I've got a question. Doesn't it sound like half a film?
It depends how you want to chop it up. Yeah. Maybe it's an emotional battle.
Okay.
Let me ask you a question.
Please.
So early on, you kind of almost like a monk kind of dedicated yourself to learning the Akai in BC, but then you also sort of swiftly abandoned it for the Horaflora stuff. And one of the things that really struck me watching you perform early on was this idea of maintenance. And I think the audience sort of saw this to some extent, which is like, you have to set things up, and like some of them are actually like very physical. Like when you're blowing up a balloon, we can sort of feel the effort, the energy that goes into something like that. So it becomes like a very visceral performance. But also there are these things that are kind of, you're setting up and they're literally falling apart, they're moving, they're falling off of things, they're deflating. And like how, is the maintenance important to the form, or is it just like something that happens to be there because it's necessary? Do you think maintenance contributes to the music in some way?
I think it has to, you know. If it wasn't for that aspect, while even if everything went according to plan, there would still be an aleatoric aspect to it, likely enough. If anybody doesn't know what that word means, it means somewhat chancy, I guess. So yeah, absolutely, and I've kind of dug into that. So as I've developed some new techniques, which were not necessarily presented today, having, you know, leaving room for that. You know, they don't have to be perfect, and the less perfect they are, maybe the better that they are. It makes every performance extra unique, and you know, I think that I find great value in that.
Yeah, that's really true.
Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I mean, even Chad would talk about this, but the idea that like, kind of, and I would talk about this too in my own work, the idea that like, you want for a viewer sometimes for every experience to be like unique in some capacity.
Yeah.
You know, it makes you special maybe. Yes.
What is your name? We're going to start calling you.
I'm Meg.
Hi, Meg.
Nice to meet you. Have you ever played with medical tubing that has the little rib, it has like a rib that goes around the tube and it's made out of plastic? If you whirl it above your head.
Oh yeah. Whirligigs, I think is what those are called in the musical world. Yeah, I think we've played with those a little bit. Those are actually a pretty established 50s and 60s improvisational tool in certain like ensembles. I've never actually added those. No, I've never added one to. I played with them, but not in the performance. I don't know why. They're volatile, you know.
There's different sizes of them too, like
Yeah.
construction. You can find really big ones.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't realize it was medical tubing. But yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah, like the CPAP machines.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they don't necessarily expand.
Sure. But if they do, all the better.
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
Maybe one more question, and then we'll, Mitchell?
It seems like your work is split up into these two very distinct bodies, like one where you are working with instruments and one where you're working with more, when I say instruments, I mean digital instruments,
Oh, sure.
and one where you're working with more of these prepared instruments. Is there, one, with the prepared instruments, how are you thinking about documentation and the difference between a recorded sound and a recorded sound, and experiencing that live, and how to go about doing that? And then, is there any room for overlap with these two activities, with these two sets of steps?
Yeah, sure. To document, I mentioned the binaural recordings, so I have a good many records, tapes, and CDs and digital recordings that are, you know, some which try to just capture the sound of my performance, you know, where everything was individually recorded and put back together in the studio to make like the most fulfilling aspect, you know. So these like these surround sound tapes, you know, rather than just using the field recording that I put on them, I put them around the room, record them, and when you listen with headphones, you get as close to a Horaflora performance as possible. And then as for the second question, I think that some of the intuitive vibe, I guess is the word I'm going to use here, that goes through this, where basically I want to be surprised. I want what I'm doing to surprise me as much as hopefully it surprises other people. With the electronic stuff, I had kind of given up I'm relegated to using the PA for the electronic stuff. That stuff could also be routed to a quadraphonic or, you know, whatever PA, we can do that, and play in a more traditional way. But for the most part, with this, using PAs, I'll sometimes use them for just very low sounds or something. But when you're playing, like everything has to be as quiet or like not as loud as the quietest thing, or at least leave room for it. So if I was going to play some electronic instruments maybe over a PA, I don't know. I have another idea for channeling some of that stuff through some of this stuff, but so far I've kept it separate.
Thank
No, thank you.
If there are further questions, we'll be hanging out, so feel free to stop up here. Rob will be having a show along with myself and Robert on Sunday at 7, so please join